Deuteronomy 26. First fruits and tithes. And when you have entered the land of the Almighty your God is giving you as an inheritance and have taken possession of it and settled in, take some of the first fruits of all that you produce from the soil of the land the Almighty your God is giving you, and you put them in a basket. Then go to the place the Almighty your God will choose as a dwelling for his name, and say to the priest in the office at the time, I declare today to the Almighty your God that I have come to the land the Almighty God swore to our ancestors to give us. The priest shall take the basket from your hands and set it down in front of the altar of the Almighty your God. Then you shall declare before the Almighty your God, my father was a wandering Adamite, and he went down into Egypt with a few people and lived there and became a great nation, powerful and numerous. But the Egyptians mistreated us and made us suffer, subject us to harsh labor. Then we cried out to the Almighty, the God of our ancestors, and the Almighty God heard our voice and saw our misery, toil, and oppression. So the Almighty God brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with great terror and with signs and wonders. He brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now bring the first fruits of the soil that you, the Almighty God, have given me. Place the basket before the Almighty your God and bow down before him. Then you and the Levites and the foreigners residing among you shall rejoice in the good things the Almighty your God has given to you and your household. And when you have finished setting aside a tenth of all your produce in the third year, the year of the tithe, you shall give it to the Levites, the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widow, and that they may eat in your towns and be satisfied. Then they said to the Almighty your God, I have removed from my house the sacred portion and have given it to the Levites, the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, according to all you commanded. I have not turned aside from your commands, nor have I forgotten any of them. I have not eaten any of the sacred portion while I was in mourning, nor have I removed any of it while I was unclean, nor have I offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the Almighty my God, and I have done everything you commanded me. Look down from heaven, your holy dwelling place, and bless your people Israel in the land you have given us, as you promised on oath to our ancestors, a land flowing with milk and honey. Follow the Almighty God's commands. The Almighty your God commands you this day to follow the decrees and laws, carefully observe them with all your heart and with all your soul. You have declared this day that the Almighty is your God, and that you will walk in obedience to him, and that you will keep his decrees, commands, and laws, and that you will listen to him. And the Almighty God has declared this day that you are his people and his treasured possession, as he promised, and that you are to keep all his commands. He has declared that he will set you in praise, fame, and honor high above all the nations. He has made, and that you would be a people holy to the Almighty your God, as he promised, the altar on Mount Ebal. Deuteronomy 27. Moses and the elders of Israel commanded the people, keep all these commands that I give you today, and when you have crossed the Jordan into the land the Almighty your God is giving you, set up some large stones and coat them with plaster. Write on them all the words of this law when you have crossed over to enter the land the Almighty your God is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Almighty, the God of your ancestors, promised you. And when you have crossed the Jordan, set up these stones on Mount Ebal as I commanded you today, and coat them with plaster. Build there an altar to the Almighty your God, an altar of stone, and do not use any iron tool on them. Build the altar of the Almighty your God with filled stones, and offer burnt offerings on it to the Almighty your God. Sacrifice fellowship offering there, eating them and rejoicing in the presence of the Almighty your God. And you shall write very clearly all the words of this law on these stones you have set up.